Most bird owners spend hundreds of dollars on the right food, the right toys, the right vet, and then put the cage in the one spot in the house that undoes all of it. The problem is almost never what's inside the cage. It's where the cage is sitting. So before you move anything, let me show you what I found out the hard way, and what a $35 monitor sitting at cage height will tell you that your bird never can. I had a green-cheeked conure named Percy. He was 3 years old, healthy, active, vocal in the morning, curious about everything. I moved his cage one afternoon in January. I moved it away from the window because it was cold outside, and I had read somewhere that drafts were dangerous. I moved it to the corner of the living room, against 2 walls, right next to the couch, so he could be part of family life. He was near us all day. He could hear the television. He could see the kids doing homework at the kitchen table through the doorway. I thought I was doing everything right. Percy was dead 4 months later. Not suddenly, slowly. He got quiet. He stopped finishing his food. His feathers looked wrong. Not molting wrong, just dull. Held a little too tight to his body. The vet found nothing specific. Called it a general decline. Said sometimes birds just go. I believed that for 2 years. I have been keeping birds for 11 years since Percy and I now know exactly what happened to him. It was not illness. It was not bad luck. It was placement. 3 specific decisions I made about where that cage sat, and every one of them was wrong in a way I did not understand until I had kept birds long enough to see the same pattern repeat in other people's homes. The cage was near a heating vent. I did not notice it when I moved it there. The vent was in the baseboard, low on the wall, and the cage stand sat directly over it. Every time the heat kicked on, warm, dry air blew up through the bottom of the cage. Every time it shut off, cold air settled back down. Percy was cycling through hot and dry, then cool and still, dozens of times a day, every day, all winter. I thought I had fixed the draft problem. I had replaced it with something worse. Here is what nobody tells you when you bring a bird home. The cage is not just furniture. It is the bird's entire world. A bird cannot leave the room when it gets stressed. It cannot step outside when the air turns bad. It cannot move to the sunny side when the draft hits. It sits in the one spot you chose for it, 24 hours a day, every day of its life, breathing whatever is in the air at cage height, feeling every temperature swing and every vibration in that specific location. You pick the spot once. The bird lives with it forever. So when I tell you that placement is the most important single decision you will make for your bird's long-term health, I am not exaggerating. I have watched 3 birds decline and 1 recover completely, and the only variable that changed was where the cage was sitting in the room. Most bird owners think about what is near the cage, the window, the other pets, the drafty door. What they do not think about is what is beneath the cage, what is above it, what is circulating through it, and what the air inside that specific corner of the room is actually carrying. That is the gap where the mistakes live. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. The first thing I want you to understand is that the problem is almost never obvious. It does not look like an emergency. A bird slowly declining from chronic stress or chronic fume exposure looks for a long time like a bird that is just a little quieter than usual, a little less interested in its morning chop, a little slower to step up. If you do not know what healthy and thriving looks like over years, you can miss the early signs for months. By the time the bird is visibly unwell, the problem has been running for a long time. That is why placement matters so much. Not because one bad day in a drafty spot will kill a bird, it usually won't, but because the wrong spot runs silently in the background for years, grinding down the immune system a little at a time until the bird cannot fight off something it would have handled easily in a better environment. The cage position is not a one-time decision you make when you set things up. It is a decision that runs continuously, every hour of every day, for the life of the bird. Get it right, and you almost never have to think about it again. Get it wrong, and no amount of good food or good veterinary care fully compensates. So here is the question I want you sitting with as we go through this. Where is your cage right now? And what do you actually know about that spot? The reason people make these mistakes is not carelessness. It is that every instinct a person has about what makes a good environment works in reverse for a bird. The places in your home that feel most inviting to a human are often the most dangerous for a bird, and the places that seem boring or out of the way are often the safest. The kitchen is the most obvious example. It smells alive. It is warm. It is the social center of most homes. People spend hours there. They talk. They cook. They move around. They make noise. For a bird owner, putting the cage in the kitchen feels generous. The bird gets to be part of everything. It gets stimulation. It gets company. What it also gets is polytetrafluoroethylene fumes every time you cook on high heat with non-stick cookware, cleaning product aerosols every time you spray the counter, and accumulated particulate matter from cooking oils and combustion that you do not notice because your respiratory system filters it differently than a bird's does. A bird's respiratory system is built for efficiency. They evolved to extract oxygen at altitude, at speed, in thin air. That efficiency means they absorb airborne compounds faster and more completely than any mammal. Compounds that give a human a mild headache will kill a bird at concentrations that you would not even detect by smell. Non-stick cookware is the most documented example, and I want to be clear about it because there is still a lot of confusion. The coating releases gases when it gets overheated. Overheated means above about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. A pan on high heat on a gas burner reaches that temperature in under 4 minutes. A forgotten pan gets there faster. The gas is colorless and odorless. The bird shows no distress until it is already dying. This is documented in veterinary toxicology. It is not a rare edge case. It is one of the most common preventable bird deaths recorded in avian veterinary practice, and it happens because the owner did not know the cage was in the wrong room. The living room is subtler. It feels like the right answer. Family time, stimulation, company. The television flickers. People come and go. The dog walks through. Children run past. The volume goes up and down. The lights change with the time of day and the programs on screen. For a social animal, all of this seems like exactly what it needs. What it actually is for a prey animal that evolved to track movement and sound as survival signals is a continuous low-level alerting environment. The bird cannot turn it off. It cannot decide the television is not a threat. It monitors everything. It stays ready. And that readiness, held for months and years, does to a bird's adrenal system what chronic overwork does to a person. It does not kill them fast. It just shortens everything. The counterintuitive truth is this: a bird does not need stimulation the way we think it does. It needs security. It needs a position where it can see what is approaching from the front, has something solid behind it, is not in a draft, is not in fume exposure, and is not vibrating with noise from every direction. The boring corner of the spare bedroom that you would never choose for yourself is often the healthiest place in the house for a bird. The exciting, warm, social kitchen is often the most dangerous. Every instinct you have about what makes a good environment works backwards here, and once you understand that, the rest of this becomes simple. The first thing to do costs nothing and takes 2 minutes. The draft test. Wet the back of your hand. Hold it at cage height in every spot you are considering. Hold it there for 60 seconds and do not move it. The back of your hand is far more sensitive to air movement than the palm. The moisture makes it even more so. You will feel drafts in places that look still. The gap under the window frame that you thought was sealed. The return air vent 6 feet above the spot you picked that pulls air across the room at floor level. The gap under the door at the end of the hall that lets cold air slide across the floor every time someone opens the front door in winter. Do this test in both seasons if you can, because the draft that kills a bird in February from the window seal is not the same as the one that suppresses its immune function in July from the air conditioning vent. Mark the spots on a piece of paper. The cage goes somewhere that passed the test, nothing else. Call that step 1. The draft test, free, 2 minutes. Do it before you put the cage anywhere permanently. Step 2 is the height rule, and it surprises almost everyone I tell it to. The cage should sit at chest height, not on the floor, not on top of a bookcase, not hung from the ceiling at eye level or above. Chest height, roughly where your sternum is when you are standing next to it. Here is why the floor position is harmful. Birds are prey animals. In nature, the floor is where danger comes from. A bird sitting at floor level in your home, watching every person who enters the room loom over it, watching every dog or cat move past from above, is a bird in a permanent prey state. It is never fully relaxed. You will see the posture. Feathers tight, eyes wide, reluctant to step up, startles easily. People read this as the bird having an attitude problem or being unsocialized. It is usually just fear from the position. Height above eye level has the opposite problem. In bird social structure, height equals status. A bird that consistently sits above you does not read you as its flock leader. It reads you as a subordinate or a peer at best. What follows is a bird that is harder to handle, more likely to bite, more likely to scream for attention, more likely to develop hormonal aggression in maturity. The position creates the behavior, and then the behavior gets blamed on the bird's personality. Move that bird to chest height and watch what changes in 48 hours. The posture opens up, the eyes soften. The contact calls shift from alarm-toned to conversational. It is the single fastest behavioral change in cage setup, and it is free. It just requires a taller stand or a different surface. The trick with height that most people miss: measure from the floor to the bottom of the cage, not the top. You want the floor of the cage, where the bird spends most of its time, to land at chest height. If you measure to the top of the cage, the bird's actual living level ends up below your waist, and you are back in the prey position problem. Step 3 is the one I want you to spend money on, but not much. Get an air quality monitor and put it at cage height for 1 week before you decide the spot is safe. The one I use is the Temtop M10. It runs about $35. It reads particulate matter and VOC levels, volatile organic compounds, in real time on a small display. VOCs are the category that covers most of what kills birds from fume exposure. Candles, wax melts, air fresheners, cleaning sprays, certain incense, plug-in deodorizers, scented laundry products left near the room, self-cleaning oven cycles, all of these register on VOC. You put the monitor at cage height because that is what the bird is breathing, not what you are breathing at nose height 3 feet above. Air stratifies. The compounds that come off a candle flame rise and fall differently than what comes off a heated nonstick pan. The only way to know what is at cage height is to measure at cage height. Run it for a week before you commit to the spot. Open the windows one morning and note the baseline. Light a candle in the room and watch the number. Run the self-cleaning oven cycle and watch what happens throughout the house. You will learn things about your own air that will surprise you. I ran one for a week in my kitchen and found a VOC spike every time I used a particular dish soap I had been buying for years. I switched soaps. The spike disappeared. The monitor told me something the bird could not. If the spot passes the draft test, sits at the right height, and shows clean air on the monitor, you have solved the 3 biggest hidden killers in cage placement. Everything else, the right food, the right perches, the right enrichment, lands on a foundation that actually supports a healthy bird. One more thing that costs nothing and changes everything. At night, cover 3 sides of the cage with a lightweight cotton cloth and leave the front open. A pillowcase works. A thin curtain panel works, not a heavy blanket that traps heat and reduces airflow. Not plastic sheeting that blocks air entirely. Just a single layer of breathable cotton on the back and both sides with the front open. This mimics how birds sleep in nature. Roosted into a branch with cover on most sides and an open view in front. It muffles vibration from walls. It blocks light bleed from street lights and electronics. It signals to the bird that it is safe to drop into deep sleep. I started doing this with my second bird, and the change was visible in 2 days. The nighttime thrashing stopped. The 3 a.m. fright calls stopped. She started sleeping through until morning and woke up vocal and active instead of dull and tight. 1 pillowcase, no cost, results in 2 days. Step back from the details now and look at what is actually happening. Drafts, corner vibration, fume exposure, wrong height. None of these kill a bird in a day. All of them work on a bird the way chronic stress works on any living thing. Slowly, quietly. In the background, while the surface looks fine, you see a bird eating and moving and making noise, and you assume it is well. But a bird eating 70% of what it used to eat, moving less than it did 6 months ago, making noise that is slightly more alarm-toned than social. That bird is telling you something in the only language it has. And if you do not know the language, and you have not addressed the environment, you miss it until there is nothing left to fix. The hardest part of this for most people is that the bird is hiding it, not deliberately, instinctively. A prey animal that shows weakness is a prey animal that gets taken. So birds are built to mask illness, mask pain, mask fatigue, mask the early signs of whatever is wrong until the reserves run out and the mask drops. By the time you see a bird sitting at the bottom of the cage, feathers puffed, not eating, the problem has been running for weeks. The placement decision you made months ago is contributing to what you are watching now, and you will never trace it back unless someone has told you what to look for. A bird that seems fine can be dying. A bird that seems wrong probably is. These are the two things I wish someone had told me before Percy. The money part is worth saying plainly. The 3 changes I described cost $35 for the air quality monitor, whatever a taller stand costs if you need one. Call it $40 at most, and a pillowcase you probably already own. The total outlay for fixing every placement mistake I described is under $80, and most of it is a one-time purchase. Compare that to a single avian vet visit for a bird in respiratory decline, which runs between $150 and $300, depending on where you live and what diagnostics they run. Compare that to the cost of the bird itself and however many years you have already invested in its care. The $80 is not a cost. It is an insurance policy with a very high payout and a very low premium. Here is the line that took me years to learn, and I want to leave it with you because it is the point the whole video has been building toward. The bird is not sick because of bad luck. The bird is sick because of where it is sitting. Change where it is sitting and you change what happens next. Most of what gets called a mystery illness in a bird under 5 years old is environmental. Most of what gets called old age in a bird under 10 is environmental. The placement was the variable nobody checked and nobody changed. Here is what I want you to do tonight, not this weekend. Tonight, walk to wherever your bird's cage is right now. Wet the back of your hand. Hold it at cage height in that spot for 60 seconds. If you feel movement, write down where it is coming from. Then look at what is on the sides of the cage. If 2 walls are within 2 feet, that is the corner trap. Then name the last time you burned a candle in that room or cooked on high heat with non-stick cookware. You do not have to fix everything tonight, but I want you to name the one thing you are going to change. One thing. Write it down or just decide it, and then tell me in the comments what you found. Tell me where your cage is sitting right now and what the draft test showed you. I read every comment and I will tell you whether what you are describing matches what I think it is. Next time, I am going to tell you about the one food that is in almost every bird owner's kitchen right now that is slowly damaging your bird's liver over months. It is not avocado. Everyone knows about avocado. This one surprises people every time, and it is probably sitting in your fruit bowl right now.